This is Dead Island 2, a game about surviving a zombie apocalypse in Los Angeles. Beyond all the chaos and carnage, the game's world is peppered with details that ground the experience. There are cars left in the street, houses abandoned mid-breath, shops looted for supplies. Everything you'd expect from a zombie game is here. But does that detail extend to everything? What about the notices plastered on walls? The no parking notices and street signs? These elements all raise the question: how accurate and authentic are all of the signs, posters, and words in Dead Island 2? Do they reflect real life in the real Los Angeles, or are they just atmospheric filler? There are various examples of things that have been pulled straight from real life in Dead Island. From things like this first aid guide, which is very clearly inspired by a common poster you can buy for your own workplace, to this Coastlines of America map, which actually does reflect the real boundaries defined by the Los Angeles MPA Collective. Even some things like this Santa Monica Pier sea temperature range graph are 100% real and pulled straight from real-life data sources. All of these three examples are pulled from the Santa Monica Pier area of the game, specifically the lifeguard headquarters on the beach. So let's stick with this for a bit and explore some of the other signs, posters, and papers. One of the things you'll see a few times are these beach warning flag posters, which are clearly inspired by this very real poster. These flags do match the definitions and standards set by the International Life Saving Federation to keep the public informed about beach conditions. Though admittedly, I can't actually recall ever seeing one of these, let alone knowing what they meant. So maybe we need to do a better job of that. One interesting note, this chart is actually missing the red and white quartered flag meant to signal an emergency evacuation, that everyone should stay out of the water due to an emergency. This flag is usually used for dangerous marine creatures like sharks or crocodiles, when water is polluted due to runoff or spillages, or even if lifeguards just need everyone out of the water so they can search for a lost child. Naturally, I think it ought to apply when there's a zombie apocalypse and zombies keep coming out of the water, but I did check and sadly there are no flags present on any of the beaches in the game. Missed opportunity. There's also this lifeguards hand signals definition poster, which is actually pulled straight from real life, with some modifications of course. Just in case, I did look up the official definitions and these do appear to match. Not that it's a surprise, I'm not sure why someone in real life would be selling an incorrect poster. But the thing on the beach that really excited me were these papers. They're pinned to a few boards clearly meant for patient evaluation and treatment. There's this treatment and evacuation card, a tactical combat casualty card, or a TCCC, and then there's this other card which lists things like medications and such for the patient. Now it turns out, all of these are pulled from the same source, the Tactical Combat Casualty Care Guidelines. These are a set of instructions around triaging patients in pre-hospital situations like disasters or combat, and were put together and released by the United States Defense Health Agency. You can actually just go and download the whole booklet on this. And it does make sense to see a gamut of these in Dead Island 2. The TCCC, that's never going to be easy to say, is very clearly focused on military personnel though, with most listed injuries related to things like artillery, grenades, landmines, IEDs, RPGs, the list goes on. Though it does have a few things like blunt and burn injuries that you would expect anyone to have. Meanwhile, the treatment and evacuation card has broader applications, helping doctors indicate what type of intervention was used, if there is consciousness, if there are airway or breathing issues, or if the person is in shock. It also lets them indicate whether someone is safe to remain, or if they need urgent or non-urgent evacuation. Technically, if you look close enough, it says return to duty, which wouldn't apply to anyone but soldiers, but this would clearly be the more useful of the two for civilians. And finally, there's this other sheet of paper which has been slightly altered to remove battle at the top, so that way it looks a little more applicable at a glance to the general public. This one is meant to document treatments in an emergency, so someone else can quickly see whether the person is on oxygen, antibiotics, or pain medication. Overall, just really cool to see. In the game, there are a lot of small details like this, from papers that have laboratory test report and molecular diagnosis report, something you would expect in a zombie apocalypse that's based on a virus of some sort. And there's also things like notices about water being unsafe or warnings about above ground piping, the usual things you would expect to see. Not everything is perfect though. A lot of the news clippings in the game have real titles, but a bunch of gibberish below. And I did find a map that looks real enough, but for some reason just has 2 blocks of lorem ipsum in the 2 corners. But probably the most interesting incorrect thing, which I was really excited to find, was this community notice from the police department looking for a stolen vehicle. At first glance, it nails the look. Suspect vehicle, specifications, last seen, for public distribution. But then you read the fine print, and it's actually just a primer on cars. Cars are equipped with controls used for driving. These controls include a steering wheel, pedals for operating the brakes and controlling the car's speed, and a number of buttons and dials for turning on the lights, ventilation, and other functions. I really love discovering things like this. 99% of players won't bother reading anything beyond the big headlines on a piece of paper. Dead Island is an action game after all. It makes sense. Most folks are just hunting loot and need the world to look real enough at a glance. So when you spot a police notice in a park, your brain just kind of files it away as background noise. But I love looking at the smaller details, and it makes me really, really happy to find placeholder text that isn't just the usual lorem ipsum. While we're here though, the park has a number of other things for us to look at. From this dry climate zone map of California that looks far more like a NOAA drought monitor map than anything tied to reality, especially because fire risks change throughout the year, even week to week, so it doesn't really make sense for one part of the state to be permanently at a high fire risk. There's also this fire risk explanation next to it that doesn't quite match up with the nationally defined colors. It skips over yellow, high, in favor of very high orange and extreme red. And these definitions of each color certainly isn't accurate. Even if there's a very high fire risk, no one is going to say that it's okay to make a fire as long as you have an experienced camper to guide you. The official definition of very high risk says that fires start easily from all sources and immediately spread rapidly and increase quickly in intensity. It goes on to explain that a fire that gets out of control for more than a few minutes in this kind of weather isn't possible to stop in these conditions. So the fire-related information isn't necessarily accurate, even if it is convincing at a glance. But what about the road signs? One of the stranger things I encountered are these end signs at the back of these parking spots next to a railing that has a ledge. This seemed wrong to me. Surely end can't be meant to be used like this, right? And surely enough, they aren't. The end plaque code R3-9DP is used to supplement a regulatory sign to inform road users of a location where a regulation condition ends and is typically mounted directly above the sign in question. Basically, you'd expect these to have context with them. Something like begin bus lane and end bus lane, rather than just existing itself as like a there's obviously the end of the road here kind of indicator. And this isn't the only road sign where the game struggles a bit. I happened upon this private property, no trespassing, no parking sign, and decided to look up the fine print. LAMC 803.71.4 is a real code. It's the prohibition of parking of vehicles without permission on privately owned or publicly owned property. Checks out. I even looked at the LAPD Pacific Division, and while the phone number is obviously fake, that is the correct area code for Bel Air. It was this CVC 25984D that threw me for a loop. I spent some time looking for the California Vehicle Code, because I assumed that's what CVC stood for, to try and find out what this regulation was. The first issue I ran into is the abbreviation for it is actually VEH and not CVC. But the closest thing to that number in the California books is under light restrictions and mounting, and that only runs from 950 to 952. Nothing goes as high as 25984. So I started looking up that number in other California law books. Maybe it comes from something else, and there are a few out there. The California Water Code has a 25984, which says, the aggregate of the valuations of the segregated portions shall be the same as the valuation of the parcel before segregation. So it's not that. The California Health and Safety Code has a 25984, which has to do with laws and punishment around force feeding birds. That's definitely not it. And then there's the California Public Resources Code, which again does have a 25984. And get this, it even has a D entry, but it just reads, a tree or shrub that is subject to a city or county ordinance. The whole entry has to do with trees planted around solar collectors. Clearly not it. Of course, no one would actually know that this wasn't accurate, so this kind of detail doesn't really matter. But I will point out, you may have missed this. We're currently in Bel Air, and this sign does explicitly say, at Venice owner's expense. For those who don't know, LA, Venice is at best 4.5 miles away, which doesn't seem like much. But with LA, that's at least a 20-minute drive, and that's before you count for traffic. Just a few feet away from that is actually another no parking sign that looks really similar, except it has the CVC code 225423A. Again, this isn't a real code that I can find. 22514 is a ticket for parking near a fire hydrant. 22507 is parking in a handicap space. 22507.6 is a street sweeping violation. Even 22500 is just a catch-all illegal parking code. We're once again in the close to real-life realm, but not quite. Whoever put these signs in the game may have just randomized the code when they went in to change the phone numbers. But I can't help but wonder if these are real codes somewhere. So if you happen to be an expert on vehicle codes somehow, let me know in the comments because I'd love to know where these are from. I do recommend you go out and explore Data on 2 for yourself. There are a lot of hidden gems in the minutia out there. From shipping container labels to electrical panels, there are dozens of other examples of amazing details like these. To me, they're an invitation to slow down, to look closer and appreciate the care that the developers, the level designers, and the hundreds or thousands of people put into making games like this for us. Thanks so much for watching, and special thanks for Annie Austin for continuing to inspire me to make videos like this, for showing me that there is actually an audience for the kind of things I like to look at and examine. I have a long list of other dorky videos like this that I want to explore actually, and I can't wait to get them into your hands, or eyes, whatever. I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, help me out and hit that subscribe button because we're getting real close to 10,000. And honestly, I just trying to find the audience that enjoys these videos. I know it's a change from the stuff I previously made. I'm trying new editing, inspired by another graphic designer that I'm going to put down in the comments below. I'm just learning, trying new things, and I'm glad you're here on this journey with me. For now though, I think that's it. I'll see you next time.